I was halfway through my third coffee when I noticed it, a tiny discrepancy buried in vendor payments from a client called Havencrest Holdings. My name is Aaron Blake, I'm 27, and until recently, I was a junior financial analyst at Lennox Capital in Portland. Most days I sat alone in a cubicle lined with spreadsheets, numbers flickering under fluorescent lights. I wasn't popular, didn't join happy hours, didn't fake laughs at bland meetings, but numbers made sense to me. They didn't lie or manipulate. That's why this invoice caught my attention. Just $100 off from what our system showed, but then I saw another, and another, different vendors all routing to the same 3 offshore accounts. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. This wasn't a typo, it was deliberate. I glanced around the open office floor, clusters of chatter, someone's birthday cake being sliced near the printer. My pulse thudded in my ears as I highlighted the payments and copied them into a private folder. For a moment my finger hovered over the keyboard. Should I tell anyone? I took a deep breath, feeling my grandmother's words echo in my mind. Aaron, always stand by the truth, even if your voice shakes. If this story makes you think about courage and silence, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You never know who might need to hear it today. Aaron stood outside Marcus DeVeru's office, folder clutched to his chest. Marcus was his direct supervisor, mid-40s, sleek hair, polished cufflinks, always busy. When Aaron knocked, Marcus waved him in without looking up from his twin monitors. "What's up, Blake?" Aaron stepped forward, feeling the carpet soften beneath his shoes. "I found something strange in Havencrest's payments," he said, placing the folder on Marcus's desk. Finally, Marcus looked up, his hazel eyes sharp. "Strange how?" Aaron opened the folder to the highlighted lines. "These invoices are routed through shell companies. Same 3 offshore accounts, same pattern each time. It's systematic, sir." For a moment the room went silent except for the hum of the ceiling vent. Marcus flipped through the pages, his brow tightening. When he closed the folder, his fingers drummed against the cover. Then his gaze locked on Aaron's, unblinking. "These clients are too important. Let it go." The words landed like a slap. Aaron nodded slowly, masking the sting in his chest. Understood. But as he left the office, his mind raced. Marcus didn't know Aaron had already copied every file to his encrypted drive. By the next morning, HR summoned him. Restructuring, they said, position eliminated. Severance would be deposited within a week. No one met his eyes as he packed his desk into a cardboard box. He walked out quietly, pulse pounding with betrayal and a flicker of something else, resolve. Aaron sat on the edge of his narrow bed, staring at the severance envelope in his lap. Morning light spilled through the blinds, striping the floor with pale gold. He thought about his grandmother's voice, warm and steady. "Aaron, numbers don't lie, but people do. Trust your gut." She raised him after his parents died in a train collision when he was 12. Her words had shaped him, the quiet boy who studied late, who noticed patterns others overlooked. Lennox Capital wasn't his dream job, but it was stable, respectable. He'd worked long weeks without complaint, earning a reputation for diligence, if not brilliance. Marcus had even praised him once, saying, "I need analysts who see what others miss." Now Aaron wondered what Marcus really meant. The Havencrest accounts had always been off limits. Questions were brushed aside with curt nods or vague explanations. A month ago, Aaron overheard Marcus on the phone. "Relax, no one's digging deeper, it's handled." At the time, he dismissed it as management talk. But yesterday's forced smile, today's sudden firing, they told a different story. Aaron pressed his palms to his eyes, feeling the sting of exhaustion and betrayal, but beneath it all, something hardened inside him. Fear ebbed, replaced by clarity. They thought silencing him would erase the truth. They were wrong. Aaron sat at his kitchen table, an untouched cup of tea growing cold beside his laptop. He opened his wallet and slid out a card he'd kept hidden behind his driver's license. Sienna Brooks, Senior Compliance Officer. Her direct line was printed in clean black ink. They'd only spoken twice. Once when she'd checked a flagged transaction he'd reported months ago. "Good catch," she'd said, scanning his orderly spreadsheets. "Not everyone bothers looking this closely." "Just doing my job," he'd replied softly. Sienna had studied him with calm, steel-gray eyes. "Keep doing it that way." She'd handed him her card. "If you ever see something that feels wrong, my door is open." He never thought he'd need it. Now her words pulsed through his mind like a lifeline. He glanced at the folder of copied Havencrest records on his desk. HR's cold farewell still echoed in his chest, but something deeper burned hotter, a resolve sharpened by betrayal. Aaron picked up his phone, thumb hovering over the numbers. The room felt too quiet, the ticking clock loud against his ribs. Finally, he dialed. Each ring drummed louder in his chest until a voice answered, Brooks speaking. For a moment, Aaron couldn't find his words, then he drew in a shaky breath. "Hi, Sienna, it's Aaron Blake. I think I've found something you need to see." Sienna's office was smaller than Aaron expected. No window, just walls lined with policy binders and thick regulatory manuals. She gestured to the chair across from her desk as Aaron stepped in, clutching the manila folder tight against his chest. He sat down slowly, feeling the chair's stiff cushion under him. "I'm not employed here anymore," he began, his voice low but steady, "but I couldn't walk away without showing someone this." He placed the folder on her desk with careful precision. Sienna didn't open it right away. Instead, she studied his face. "Tell me what I'm looking at." Aaron swallowed hard, then explained the shell companies, the repeated offshore routing, the falsified vendor records. How Marcus had ordered him to ignore it, how he was fired the next morning for restructuring. As he spoke, his chest tightened with each memory. Sienna's expression didn't change. When he finished, she reached for the folder, flipping through each page with slow, deliberate focus. Finally, she closed it, her fingers drumming lightly on the cover. "You kept copies of internal financial records," she said quietly, not as a question. Aaron nodded. "Yes, I know it's against policy, maybe illegal." She looked at him for a long moment, her gaze piercing. "What do you want out of this, Aaron?" He felt his shoulders sag, exhaustion pushing through his bones. "Nothing. I couldn't pretend I didn't see it." Sienna exhaled slowly, sliding the folder into her drawer. "I'll look into it," she said, "but you should know this could come back on you, hard." 3 days later, Aaron found a certified letter slipped under his apartment door. The Lennox Capital logo glared at him from the envelope. Sitting on his kitchen counter, he tore it open with trembling fingers. The letter accused him of theft of proprietary information, breach of confidentiality, and defamation. It demanded he return all company documents immediately and sign a statement retracting any accusations of impropriety. The final lines pulsed in his vision. "Failure to comply will result in pursuing all available legal remedies." His pulse thundered in his ears. That afternoon, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitating, he answered. "Aaron, it's Marcus," came the smooth voice he'd once respected. "We need to talk." Aaron clenched his jaw. "I don't think that's a good idea." Marcus sighed. "Look, things got out of hand. I know you're upset about losing your job. But this isn't the way to handle it. If you drop this now, we can work something out, maybe even get you back on the team." Aaron's chest tightened with disgust. "What team would that be, Marcus? The one that launders money for criminals?" There was silence, then Marcus's voice dropped, cold and sharp. "You have no idea what you're talking about or who you're dealing with. These people," he cut himself off. "Just meet me for coffee, 15 minutes. Aaron stared at the floor, feeling anger boil under his calm. "No thanks." Marcus's final words slithered through the speaker. "You're making a mistake, Blake, a big one." Aaron hung up without replying, his fingers trembling as he set the phone down. Aaron sat across from the attorney in a narrow office lined with overflowing legal files. Elaine Donovan specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. She listened in silence as he explained everything: the fraudulent routing patterns, Marcus's dismissal, the threats in the letter. When he finished, her dark eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "You've put yourself in a precarious position," she said, folding her hands on the desk. "But if what you're saying is true, there are federal protections for whistleblowers." Aaron's heart thudded in his chest. "So I'm safe." Elaine shook her head slightly. "It's not that simple. Their termination was couched as restructuring. To prove retaliation, we need a direct link between your firing and your report. Otherwise, they'll spin this as an unrelated dismissal and attack your credibility for stealing documents." Aaron pressed his palms to his knees, feeling the ache in his bones from days of restless sleep. "So I should back down." Elaine leaned forward, her gaze steady. "I didn't say that. I said it's precarious. If your evidence is solid, we can build a case. But understand, they'll fight dirty. They always do. Powerful clients, high-level executives, they'll protect themselves at all costs." Aaron nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking into his chest. "Then what's my next step?" She reached for a yellow legal pad and began writing notes. "First, we gather every scrap of documentation you have. Then we find out who else knows what you know." Aaron exhaled shakily, feeling fear and resolve coil tight in his chest. He realized he was in deeper than he ever imagined, and there was no turning back. It was nearly midnight when a sharp knock rattled Aaron's apartment door. He froze, heart pounding. Quietly, he approached the peephole. Standing in the dim hallway was Sienna Brooks, her expression tense, eyes scanning the corridor behind her. He unlocked the door and stepped aside. She entered swiftly, closing it behind her with a soft click. "Were you followed?" Aaron asked, his voice tight with unease. She didn't answer, just placed her leather bag on his kitchen counter and pulled out a small black flash drive. "I found more," she said, her voice low. "A lot more, you only saw the edge of it." Aaron swallowed hard as she connected the drive to his laptop. Folders bloomed across the screen, each labeled by client group and date going back 5 years. The Havencrest accounts are just one branch, Sienna continued, clicking open a folder. There are at least 3 other major clients running similar laundering schemes, all high value, all protected. Aaron's throat tightened. Protected by who? She met his gaze, her eyes weary but fierce. By Daniel Lennox himself, the founder, the CEO, and he's not alone. The CFO, head of client services, they're all involved. They've been moving money offshore through shell companies, making it look legitimate. Aaron sank into a kitchen chair, his mind spinning with fear and anger. Why are you telling me this? Sienna exhaled shakily. Because you're the only other person who knows, and because, if something happens to me, someone needs to have the whole picture. The room felt unbearably small as Aaron realized the truth. They were both now part of something far larger and far more dangerous than either had imagined. Aaron sat hunched over his laptop as dawn began to edge across the city skyline outside. Sienna sipped coffee silently beside him, her tired eyes scanning each line of transactions he highlighted. We need to take this to someone who can't be bought, she said finally, her voice firm despite exhaustion. Aaron glanced at her, searching her face for doubt but found none. Who do you have in mind? He asked. Sienna reached into her wallet and pulled out a card, sliding it across the table. Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have a contact, she said. Agent Naomi Park, Financial Crimes Division. She's clean. I've worked with her before on smaller compliance cases, but this is bigger than anything I've ever seen. Aaron rubbed his temples, feeling the tremor in his fingertips. Memories of Marcus's threat replayed in his mind, each word dripping with menace. They'll come after us, he whispered. Sienna nodded. Yes, they will, but if we stay silent, more people get hurt, and this firm, it stays rotten to the core. Silence fell between them, filled only by the hum of the fridge and the distant city traffic. Finally, Aaron inhaled deeply, his chest tight with fear and clarity. Okay, he said softly, let's do it. Sienna gave a faint smile, weary but resolute. We'll call Agent Park this morning. As she closed her laptop, Aaron caught a fleeting memory of his grandmother's voice. Always stand by the truth, Aaron, even if your voice shakes. And for the first time in days, his hands felt steady. The FBI office was tucked away in a gray government building downtown, unmarked except for a discreet security plaque. Aaron sat beside Sienna in the waiting area, his knee bouncing despite his best effort to stay calm. Agent Naomi Park emerged a few minutes later, dressed simply in black slacks and a slate blue blouse, her hair pulled back in a practical bun. She didn't look like the agents in movies, no stern frown, no suit jacket, just quiet focus and tired eyes that had seen too many corporate crimes. Come with me, she said. They followed her down a narrow hallway into a small conference room lined with case files. As they sat, Naomi rested her elbows on the table. Tell me everything, start from the beginning. For 2 hours, Aaron and Sienna laid it all out, the shell companies, the offshore routing, the false vendor records, the protective shield from Lennox's highest ranks. Naomi listened intently, scribbling notes, occasionally pausing to ask pointed questions or make brief calls to verify details. When they finished, silence settled thick in the room. Finally, Naomi leaned back, her eyes sharp with recognition. If what you've brought me checks out, she said slowly, this isn't just corporate fraud. This is systematic money laundering, likely tied to tax evasion, organized crime, or worse. Aaron swallowed hard, his throat dry. So, will you investigate? Naomi's gaze locked onto his. We already are, she said. Your information corroborates an ongoing case, but we'll need your testimony. This means going on record, potentially appearing in court. Aaron exhaled shakily, feeling the table under his fingertips anchor him. I'll do it, he whispered. And for the first time in weeks, the fear in his chest began to loosen, replaced by something steadier, resolve. The next evening, Aaron returned to his budget hotel after a long day of reviewing spreadsheets for his upcoming testimony. As he stepped out of the elevator, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Parking garage. Level 2. Gray sedan. 10 minutes. No name, no explanation. His stomach clenched. Only one person knew his temporary location besides Agent Park, Sienna. Heart pounding, he hurried down the stairwell, staying close to the concrete wall. From the shadows of Level 3, he peered down into Level 2. The gray sedan was parked near an exit, engine idling softly. Carefully, Aaron descended the final steps and approached from the past. Aaron gripped the USB drive, feeling its cold edges bite into his palm. Why didn't you take this to the FBI yourself? He asked, his voice hoarse. Trevor ran a trembling hand through his unshaven hair. Because Lennox has people everywhere. Legal teams, private security, even connections in law enforcement. Sienna thought you might have someone we could trust. Aaron's mind flashed to Agent Park's calm, steady gaze. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number on her card, forcing his voice to stay even. Agent Park, it's Aaron Blake. Something S happened. Sienna's been detained by Lennox Security. I have additional evidence. Within an hour, they were in a different FBI field office, this one smaller, tucked away in an industrial park outside the city. New agents moved with quiet urgency, creating a secure copy of Trevor's files while Agent Park questioned him in a separate room. By evening, everything shifted. Sienna was extracted from Lennox headquarters under federal protection, her face pale and shaken but alive. Warrants were prepared swiftly, targeting Daniel Lennox, his CFO, and multiple compliance executives. As Aaron sat on a worn lobby bench, Agent Park approached, her expression grave yet resolute. You did the right thing, Aaron. This evidence changes everything. He exhaled, his shoulders sagging with the sudden weight of relief and exhaustion. For a fleeting moment, he imagined his grandmother's voice beside him, warm and proud, but beneath the relief pulsed a quiet knowing that the most dangerous moments were still ahead. The raid happened just after sunrise on a Tuesday. Aaron sat in the back seat of Agent Park's unmarked SUV, parked across from Lennox Capital's glass tower. FBI agents streamed into every entrance, their dark jackets sharp against the pale morning light. Employees stumbled out in confusion, some clutching coffee cups, others pulling out their phones to record. Beside him, Agent Park watched calmly. Simultaneous warrants are being executed at Daniel Lennox's home, the CFO's estate and Havencrest headquarters downtown, she said, her voice even. Aaron's gaze locked onto the main entrance as a cluster of agents escorted Marcus Devereaux out in a gray suit, his wrists cuffed discreetly in front of him. His face was pale, lips pressed tight, eyes darting nervously. Then came Daniel Lennox himself, tall and imposing even in defeat, his hair mussed, an agent's hand firm on his shoulder. As they guided him into a waiting SUV, his eyes met Aaron's through the car window. For a moment neither man moved. Aaron saw it all in Lennox's gaze, rage, disbelief, and something else, fear. The SUV door slammed shut, breaking their stare. Agent Park spoke softly beside him. Your testimony and evidence made this possible. Aaron inhaled shakily, feeling every bone in his body tremble with adrenaline and quiet vindication. The building he once walked into each morning now felt like an exposed husk, stripped of its power. As the convoy of black SUVs pulled away, Aaron whispered to himself, numbers don't lie, people do. And for the first time in years, his voice didn't shake. 2 weeks later, Aaron sat in a quiet corner of a small cafe downtown, nursing a cup of herbal tea. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Lennox CEO pleads guilty to fraud and money laundering charges. He exhaled slowly, watching rain streak down the window beside him. Daniel Lennox faced up to 15 years in prison, the CFO nearly the same. Marcus had accepted a reduced sentence for cooperation. Sienna was working with federal investigators as a compliance consultant, her expertise now in high demand. Trevor had moved to Seattle, leaving finance behind entirely to start a small software business. And Aaron had accepted a new job at a boutique investment firm across town. His boss valued his precision, his unwillingness to gloss over uncomfortable truths. Last week, the SEC confirmed his eligibility for their whistleblower reward program. The estimated payout would wipe away any financial fear for years to come. That evening, he drove to the cemetery on the city's east side, walking carefully across the wet grass until he reached a modest granite stone etched with ivy. Kneeling, he placed a small bouquet of white daisies against its base. You were right, Grandma, he whispered, his voice rough but steady. Always trust your gut. For a long moment, he stayed there in the drizzle, feeling the quiet weight of peace settle over his chest. Then he rose, shoulders squared, ready for whatever the next chapter would demand of him. 6 months later, Aaron sat in the bustling lounge of his new firm, reviewing quarterly reports on his tablet. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, warming the polished wood floors. His phone buzzed with an internal message. Can you meet with our new junior analyst this morning? Moments later, a young man approached, no older than 23, with nervous energy and a tight grip on a leather portfolio. Mr. Blake, he asked softly. Aaron looked up and nodded. I'm Jason. HR said I should speak with you about compliance protocols. They said you're the best person to explain why they matter. Aaron studied him for a moment, taking in the eager eyes, the neat suit slightly too big on his slender frame. He saw himself not in age but in quiet resolve. Gesturing to the chair across from him, Aaron said, Have a seat, Jason. Let me tell you a story about patterns and truth, and why refusing to look away is the most powerful thing you can ever do. As Jason settled in, pen poised above his notebook, Aaron felt a quiet satisfaction bloom in his chest. This was his chance to pass